All right, one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Wednesday morning. Couple accidents to report, one at Alpine and Windsor Lake Boulevard. Another one at I-77 northbound on Killian Road. And then one more at Broad River Road near Lake Murray Boulevard. Today, high of 54. Scattered showers coming through in the afternoon. Tomorrow, a lot colder, high of only 42. And a high of 49 on Friday. That's traffic and weather for your ride in on your Wednesday here on The Game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Points Hourhead and Jack Veltri along with you here. Jack, 2 straight days of no portal commitments. The sky is falling. What is happening? Everybody's in a panic. The message boards are lighting up. What is going wrong?
I like your sarcasm. It's pretty good, man. It's pretty good. I mean, look, I haven't seen, in all seriousness, I don't think I've seen the message boards go nuts. Not yet. Maybe after day 3 they will. But look, man, again, we're 2 days out from the portal closing for players to enter. And, we still got news yesterday, right? We got, the news of Julius Solomon, who we thought was entering the transfer portal. There was reports out there about it. And then a few hours later, bam, he's actually staying at South Carolina. So that's a whirlwind right there that I'm sure Gamecock fans went through, but it's good to have him back.
That is one of the more interesting trends that we've seen in the past couple of years in this now transfer portal era. Saw the same thing with Cam Scott when it came to basketball last offseason. Now, that was not a same-day turnaround. Like, again, you had Julius Solomon, at 6, 7 o'clock last night. We learned he was going to the portal, and an hour later we learned he's coming back. But it's something you see not a lot, but there have been several instances of it where a guy says, hey, I'm leaving. Oh, wait, I'm actually coming back. Now, again, I'm sure there's money details and all that kind of stuff that ended up being worked out in those hours that led to him coming back. But that is something that we're not surprised by now. Like, it's a weird thing, but it's like, okay, yeah, that just kind of happens occasionally.
Yeah, I went to a movie last night, and I saw right before the movie started, he enters the portal. By the time I got done, he's back at South Carolina. So, I mean, that's just how college football is now. Like, it's just strange, man. There's multiple cases like this, but point being, it's good to have him back. That's another guy that he hasn't made a tremendous impact yet. But with a few guys gone in that DB room, you hope that he's one of those guys that can step up and play this year and make a bigger impact.
Yeah, he's a name that we've talked about a lot. And look, Wes and Chris have been evaluating this guy for years, going all the way back to high school, very high on his upside and what he's capable of. And yeah, he just was in a room where he didn't get an opportunity to see the field quite as much, but it's a lot more wide open this year in terms of guys that you lost and those spots being open that he can compete for. So we'll see what we can do. But yeah, Julius Solomon enters the portal and then exits the portal pretty quickly in the span of a time it took Jack to watch a movie, apparently.
Yes, went to go see Primate last night.
Ooh, how was that?
First 2026 film I've seen. It was fine. If you're a horror guy, I think I could recommend it. But if you're not, I don't know. It's this chimp that gets rabies and goes absolutely bananas. So
that good pun there.
Yeah, no pun intended.
When I saw the commercial for that, I told my wife, I'm like, we have an entire, I don't even know how many of the Rise of the Planet of the Apes movies they made of why the primate thing can go wrong.
I thought it was good. From that standpoint.
Look, I mean, it's interesting, and there's a lot of horror stories out there about in real life where people have monkeys or chimps and apes or whatever, and they go crazy and hurt people and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very real thing that can happen, and definitely looks pretty creepy from the trailers that I've seen.
I would recommend it, but anyway, now we cannot bury the lead here. Let's hit the Sandstorm Minute.
Yes.
But we must get into the breaking news from yesterday.
Yes, let's first hit the Sandstorm pick-me-up because it is 9 a.m.
Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm, sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm pick-me-up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. And yes, indeed, in case you've been living under a rock for the past 24 hours, Mike Tomlin is no longer the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. After 19 seasons, he steps away following their playoff loss the other night against Houston Texans. That's very important. He was not fired. He did not retire. He stepped away. So it's one of those things that maybe it was his decision more than anything else. We don't know if he's going to go pursue another coaching opportunity for the next upcoming season. He's going to go to TV. Is he just going to take some time off? We don't know. But for the only fourth time since 1969, there will be a different head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming fall.
It's just crazy. I mean, this guy has been the head coach of the Steelers since I was 8 years old. I mean, that's insane, Tyler. Actually, check that. 7 years old. So, I mean, that's crazy to think about.
I'm really glad you brought that up. And we'll talk about the specifics of Tomlin here in a second. I want to quiz you to see if you can tell me how many different head coaches you know from the 2007 NFL season. Because, again, Bill Cowher retired at the end of 2006. Tomlin takes over starting in 2007. Of course, the only head coach from that 2007 season that was still at the same spot going into this season. You want me to just throw you out a team name and see if you can tell me who coached there?
You can give me a few.
All right, first, I'm going to start off with your favorite team. Do you know who the Buffalo Bills head coach was in 2007?
2007? No, I don't.
Dick Jauron.
Yeah, I would know.
Jauron, I believe, is the way you pronounce it. That's a name that I have not heard of in a very long time.
Yeah.
And he was getting towards the end of his coaching tenure at that point in time, but I'm sure a lot of younger fans would have been stumped by that one too.
Yeah.
Let's see. How about Cleveland? He was coaching Cleveland in 2007.
No. To be honest, man, I could probably tell you like two coaches, if that. Like, let's see. So the Patriots, Belichick, obviously.
Yes.
I would say with the Jets, it's probably who? Herm Edwards?
No. Eric Mangini. Can you tell me where Herm Edwards was in 2007? Because he was coaching.
He was coaching. I don't know. Honestly, the only coaching stops I can remember off the top of my head, and Tony Dungy was with the Colts, but
correct.
The only real coaching stops I can tell you are just with Herm is just Arizona State and then the Jets. I honestly don't know what happened in between.
He was actually coaching Kansas City at that point in time.
Yeah, I would have never guessed that.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Andy Reid was with the Eagles.
Andy Reid was with the Eagles.
Yeah, there's only a few.
How about Oakland?
Oakland. Oh, Gruden? No, not Gruden, right?
Not Gruden. Gruden was in Tampa still.
Jeez. I feel like this is an obvious one. I'm totally with
it. It's very obvious.
Oh, my God. I'm going to be so mad when you tell me. Go ahead.
Lane Kiffin.
That's right. He was there for, 1 year?
Yeah. That was the year that they drafted Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah, and him and Al Davis get into it about.
It butted heads a little bit.
Yeah, but anyway, so... I mean, that's a whole different world of coaching.
Yeah. Again, you would say you were 7.
Yes. I
was 11. Again, I'm going to be 30 later on this year. That's how long
he's coached.
Mike Tomlin was coaching.
He's coached for some fans' lifetimes at this point. That's the only coach that some Steeler fans have ever known.
There are freshmen in college or sophomores in college actually that are lifelong Steeler fans that do not know anybody other than Mike Tomlin being their head coach.
It's crazy. So when we look at his tenure, started off really good, won the Super Bowl in 2008, got back to the Super Bowl and lost to the Packers in 2010. kind of since then, it's
What,
just
3 playoff wins since then?
yeah, it's just been a lot of down years since 2018. Missed the playoffs. Wild card loss, missed the playoffs, wild card loss. It's just been, I think it was time, just because, and again, step down, not fired. There's 2 years remaining left on his contract, so I think this was definitely more of a him decision. And maybe he just thinks he needs a fresh start. Maybe he feels, maybe the organization didn't want to fire him, but they gave him the option to step down, and that's ultimately what it became. But, you know, the Steelers don't have new head coaches often. Like you said, 4 coaches since 1969. Like, that is very rare in professional sports in general. So the Steelers are going to have to really get this right, and it's going to be hard to find somebody that is better than Tomlin, Tyler, because the guy has never had a losing season since 2007.
Well, and that's the thing is, you know, they were consistent, but consistent wasn't good enough because, again, that's an organization that has a rich history with winning Super Bowls and being at the top of the NFL, which they haven't been for a very long time. And much like the Ravens with John Harbaugh, it's like just making the playoffs, just winning 9 to 10 games a season is good enough. We want to go back to the drawing board and get somebody in here that can take us back to that next level. Now, for the Steelers, I would be very shocked, and we'll get into Dan Graziano of ESPN kind of put out his projections for who he thinks each team's going to hire. I'd be very surprised if the Steelers went unproven, like, coordinator route again. As crazy as it would be, you would think somebody like John Harbaugh would actually fit what they're looking for as an established head coach that has experience, that's had success before. Who that is, we'll see. There's a lot of names out there, obviously, but I doubt they would let Tomlin walk away and then go out and hire somebody that's completely unproven.
The problem with the Steelers right now, and I think honestly, when you look at why Tomlin's going to be gone, I mean, they're just getting, it's just not even like Steeler football anymore, right? Like, this is a team.
The Texans beat them with Steeler football the other day.
This is a team that typically is hard-nosed defensively, and then they got a good run game, right? But, you know, they did not have that this year. And you know, they're just getting killed in the playoffs every time they play. They're always good enough to get to the playoffs, but as soon as they get there, they just get their doors blown off, and that's the problem. And look, I don't know if it's. I think the Steelers just need to get back to their roots of the Steeler way. And look, I wonder who you hire as a result of that. I think you do, like you said, Tyler. You need a proven head coach that's been there and done that before. I think it's not even limited to just John Harbaugh. I think he is just one of the first names I would call to get this hire. I mean,
like Mike McCarthy probably on that list too.
Yeah, McCarthy's similar to Tomlin in a lot of ways, where he's got a Super Bowl ring, ironically from the Super Bowl where the Packers beat the Steelers. But besides that, I mean, what has McCarthy done? He failed tremendously with the Cowboys.
Well, they had really good regular seasons. They just couldn't do anything in the playoffs.
Exactly my point. Where they're just like the Steelers. So that's not an upgrade, in my opinion. It could be a good hire for some teams, but for the Steelers, you really need to find a way to get this right. And look, I'm not opposed to going down the coordinator route here. I don't know who the best guy for the job would be, but I think you got to go out there and get somebody that can really be that guy that elevates you to, because I don't think this team's far off. I mean, it's not like college football where you're going to lose your entire roster. Like, you're going to lose a few free agents and whatnot, but for the most part, this will be the same roster, mind you, with a probably different quarterback heading into next season. And that gives you a real opportunity to take that next step. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I think there are a lot of things wrong with this team in 2025.
Right.
And Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. But I think you got to get a younger, more athletic, just a better overall quarterback that's not age 42 running the ship. And I think that's what the Steelers are going to definitely do here in 26.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be different seeing a new guy at the helm for the Steelers. And again, it's significant to note Tomlin stepped away. He did not get fired. He did not retire. That means the Pittsburgh Steelers have still not fired a head coach since Bill Austin in 1968. Chuck Noll retired in 1991. Bill Cowher retired after the 2006 season. They have not fired a head coach in like 50 years. Insane.
That's an organization that is just a winner. You know, they have so much tradition, and they got to get back to it because, you know, those fans, I mean, they deserve better, honestly. You know, it's been far too much losing for, you know, years now, and you know, this was the right time to move on from Tomlin.
So we'll see who they end up hiring again. We'll get into what Dan Graziano thinks are the right hires for each team in the NFL that currently has a head coach opening a little bit later on in the show. We'll get back in the portal coming up next. We know where one departing South Carolina quarterback is going to be playing college football this upcoming season, and do they still need to add somebody to that quarterback room? We'll discuss it coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry with you on your Wednesday on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Wednesday on the game tonight. Men's basketball in action. We'll get into that game a little bit more in hour number 2. Taking on John Calipari's Arkansas team. Tip-off. It's a late one, Jack. 9 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting here on 107.5 The Game and 100.3 The Game out in Myrtle Beach at 8:30. Going to have to stay up late for that one. I hate late tips, especially for teams on the East Coast. Why? I don't get it. But either way, we're hopefully get back in the win column and have a reason to be happy at 11:15 when this game's finally over.
I'm going to be snoozing on my couch covering this game by the time it gets done.
At least you don't have to go to it.
I know. Look, I understand why this game is a little bit later because you got Central Time and whatnot. But guys, I despise nothing was worse than 2 years ago when South Carolina won that Arizona tip-off tournament. And the games I remember the first game they played DePaul, which is where Chico Carter transferred to. That game I don't think started till midnight. I mean, it was absolutely insane.
If it wasn't midnight, it was like 11:30. It was really, really late. I do remember that, and that was like a Friday night because football season was still going on. I think it was like a Friday night before one of the late games in the year. But yeah, I didn't make it to the end of that one.
Yeah, that was that was a tough one. I do remember that, just how late that game got. But yeah, so this is nothing in comparison. But South Carolina desperately needs a win, and we'll see. This is a good Arkansas team.
Yeah, no kidding. So again, that game coming up tonight. We'll get into the details of that coming up a little bit later on in the show. But of course, we're keeping our eye on the transfer portal, not just for what Carolina's going to bring in, but what is going out and what Carolina's losing. And again, up to this point, Carolina's not really lost a ton of high-level production. You lost Vendrevious Jacobs, but I feel like what you've got with Nitro Chugga is a nice supplement to kind of make up for what's lost there. One of the least surprising transfers, I think, was Air Noland deciding to go in the portal after spending 1 year here after transferring it from Ohio State, because the thought process when he came in was, hey, here's a 4-star kid that redshirted Ohio State. Sellers is going to have a baller year in 2025. He's going to go and be a first-round draft pick, and boom, Air Noland can take over in 2026. Well, not only did Lenora Sellers decide to come back for 2026, Air Noland didn't seem to develop quite the way that we thought he was going to where Cutter Woods was your backup quarterback by the end of the year, which is like, okay, I think at that point seemed like the writing on the wall of Air Noland not sticking around was going to be the case, and obviously he's gone now to Memphis to continue his college career.
Yeah, you thought when Air initially came, I think everyone, including me, thought that he was going to be the backup to Sellers, and then when Sellers had a good year and left for the NFL draft, then that's when Air would take the reins and become the starter in 26. But that did not happen, as we all know. I mean, Luke Doty won the backup job. I mean, that's how things went. And I feel like that has more to do with Air than it does with Luke. I mean, Luke's, obviously probably did win the job, but I'm sure, not that Cutter was going to necessarily be your backup, but I mean, the fact that Air was essentially your 4th string on the depth chart kind of just speaks to, okay, did this thing really work? Were we getting the quarterback that was advertised, the former 4-star Ohio State commit? I mean, just did not seem like it worked out. He barely played at all, only played in 2 games this year. And for Air, I think he needed a fresh start, considering it didn't work at Ohio State. It didn't work at South Carolina. Lenore Sellers is actually now coming back for 26, so you're going to have to wait another year after 26 to even get a chance to play at South Carolina. Why waste more eligibility when you can go play at a smaller school, do well under Charles Huff, new head coach there at Memphis, play for a good G5 school, get some serious reps potentially, and then maybe even earn your way back to a P4 school. But this was the move that he needed to make, and it comes at a pretty good G5 school.
Yeah, and look, we wish him the best of luck, and like all these guys, I'll keep an ear out for what he does out there at Memphis and see how he materializes out there. And again, it just wasn't working out here at South Carolina for whatever reason. It goes back to the question, though, that we've posed a lot in this portal cycle so far. Do you fill that with a veteran backup quarterback out of the transfer portal? Because, again, Sellers is the guy. There's no doubt about that. Nobody has to question of whether he's going to be the starter or not. He's going to be your starter this upcoming year. And unfortunately, in the 2 years he's been a starter, he's been banged up a lot. missed half the game against Vanderbilt. I missed a game and a half, in the 2024 season between the second half against LSU and sat the game against Akron. Like, you need to have a backup plan ready because Sellers has been somewhat injury prone in his time here. Now, again, Cutter Woods seemed to kind of take the reins of being the number 2 guy towards the end of last year, but still doesn't have a ton of experience. Do you feel comfortable if Sellers went down, turning the reins over to him? I don't know the answer to that question. You would have to ask the coaches, obviously, but I think we'd all feel a lot more comfortable if you did, just to, again, supplement what you lost with Aaron Nolan from a numbers standpoint, go out and find somebody that maybe started for a year or two at a smaller school that's willing to come here and know his role as a backup and be there in case you need him, much like Robbie Ashford was a couple years ago.
At this point, I don't know. I think it'd be a little bit of a surprise if they went out there and got a backup to that degree of what you just said right there, of somebody kind of that's a veteran like Robbie Ashford was 2 years ago and bring that type of player in. I don't know if that's going to happen at this point. I haven't seen on our set on GC of any reported visits for like a quarterback of that sort, much less a quarterback in general. I know they offered Malachi Marshall, the top-rated JUCO quarterback from South Point in Rock Hill. So we'll see. I mean, see if he takes the offer there. He went on a visit to Carolina last week. I mean, that might have to be your option. That would give you, 4 quarterbacks?
Which is typically what Beamer teams have. They usually have around 4.
Personally, I think
on scholarship.
I don't think it really matters. I honestly think Cutter Woods would be a pretty good backup to have. I think this is the year he's got to take a step forward and continue to develop. And even though he won't see the field that often, him being the backup, I think, makes a lot of sense. Since I liked what I saw from him in the spring game and before he threw the interception against Oklahoma. I thought he was leading a pretty good drive down the field. I mean, this is a guy that I think is eventually going to be what Aaron Nolan could not be at South Carolina, is taking the reins right after Sellers leaves and running with that opportunity from there.
And maybe that's the right way to phrase this, because I think we look at this situation with Aaron Nolan and obviously leaving now to go to Memphis saying, well, he just struggled a lot. Maybe it's just that Cutter Woods was that good. We don't know. And again, Nolan was a more highly touted prospect coming out of high school, but maybe Cutter Woods was just that good of a quarterback that he just surpassed him. And that doesn't mean that Aaron Nolan's bad. It just means Cutter Woods was better. And again, we hope we have to go through this season without having to see Cutter Woods for extended periods of time, just garbage time against the likes of Towson and stuff like that. But again, when you look at Sellers' history in 2 years, he's prone to miss at least half of a game or a handful of drives here and there. So you got to have somebody ready to go. And especially with the new slate, when it comes to Kendall Browse and stuff like that, maybe they even get even more out of Cutter Woods to where they do feel comfortable about him in the backup role. We'll see. But from a number standpoint, it wouldn't hurt to add another quarterback, and we'll see, if they do decide to do that or not.
Like, my thing is, it's not the end of the world if they don't add a quarterback. I mean, I think there's way more pressing needs that South Carolina's handled this offseason and still need to handle here over the next few days, maybe a few more transfers coming out of the portal. But, yeah, I mean, if they get a quarterback, great. If not, I mean, you got guys and I think the other thing, they have walk-ons in their roster too. But I don't think you ever want to get to a point where you have to play Brandon Cunningham or Jimmy Francis. Like that would tell you things went really awry with guys getting hurt right and left. And look, Sellers has an injury history, but you're hoping he's able to stay fully healthy this year.
Yeah, ideally, you never want to see those guys play unless it's the spring game or senior day when you're winning by 50 points against somebody.
Yeah.
Like that. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
So, again, we'll see what happens. Again, no new commitments for South Carolina's transfer portal. Those some visits starting back tomorrow after the short dead period ends, and we'll get into that some more a little bit later on in the morning. But it's a big year of pressure on both Shane Beamer and Dabo Swinney. We'll evaluate and compare the pressure on both coaches as they head into the 2026 season. Coming up next, it is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri with you on your Wednesday here in the game.
If you're a small business owner, a church, or other entity in need of a new HVAC system, AAA Heating and Air has exciting news for you. AAA now offers financing to qualified organizations to aid them in installing a new light commercial HVAC system. It's as easy as calling AAA for a quote or finding them online at callAAAtoday.com. Tell them Jack from 107.5 The Game sent you. At AAA Heating and Air, they've got your back. They're offering up to 12-month payment plans on repairs with no credit check. That's right. No need to worry about your credit score. As long as you're a homeowner with a valid bank account, you'll be good to go. Take control of your comfort today by giving a call to AAA Heating and Air at 803-677-1500. Again, the number to call AAA Heating and Air is 803-677-1500. Give them a call today and breathe easy again.
I can 1,000,000,000% promise you this: when we have a hell of a season in 2026, and when I'm doing this press conference after the Clemson game next year, and we finish the regular season, that because of the success that we're going to have next season, I know we will, we're going to look back at this season and say it sucked going through it, but because of what we went through in 25, it led us to what we just did in 26. I'm a million% confident in that.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Felcher with you on your Wednesday here on the game. That was Coach Beamer following the loss to Clemson at the end of the regular season, making a proclamation for where he expected South Carolina to sit at that same point in time coming up in 2026. And obviously time will tell if that comes true. And Beamer's really likes to make proclamations at the Clemson game because 2 years ago, 2024 season, when, again, both teams were in the mix for the college football playoff at that point in time, and we thought Carolina had effectively eliminated Clemson from playoff contention, not knowing what was going to happen later that day with Miami and Syracuse. Beamer said, get used to it. This is what's going to be the standard of this game going forward, where every single year both these teams are in the playoff mix. Obviously, we know just a couple months ago that wasn't the case, as Clemson was still good enough to make a bowl game. Carolina wasn't, dropping to 4-8. And I was perusing, social media yesterday, and I came across this quote. Football coaches, American Football Coaches Association's having their meetings, I think out in Las Vegas, where coaches are getting up and speaking and talking about the state of the sport and all that kind of stuff. And Dabo Swinney, apparently in reference to talking about signing players out of the transfer portal, says, I feel like the preacher at a Vegas wedding chapel.
Yeah.
And I thought that was phenomenal. But it really kind of made me think, and going back to that quote there about Coach Beamer, we talk so much about the pressure facing Shane Beamer in 2026. Dabo's under a ton of pressure too. Now it's a little bit different considering obviously what their paths as head coaches have been, but I think we're really looking at the two major institutions in this state saying it's really a prove-it year for both these guys.
No, I would certainly say so. I think more so for Shane than Dabo, because the thing, like, for Clemson, what is the standard now? Like, Clemson, I think, is, even though they had a rough year in 2025, I do still think there is some magic in there for Clemson to be very good and win the ACC. Like, they can still get into the playoff here next year if they win the ACC, because there's still auto bids at the current time of talking here. I mean, like, I think Clemson is in a better position to be successful because they're in a weaker conference. And I think since Dabo is going into the portal now and starting to use the resource that fans have been begging him to use for some time now, I think it's going to be beneficial. And I think Dabo is going to get things turned around. Clemson.
Yeah.
At South Carolina. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was about to say, at South Carolina with Shane Beamer, I think you're in a much different spot. And I think there's far more pressure because, number one, you didn't make a bowl game in 25, unlike Clemson. Clemson made a bowl game even though they went 7-6. Whatever. So for South Carolina, though, 4-8, missed a bowl game. I think Shane Beamer's got the hottest seat right now in the SEC, unless I'm forgetting somebody. I mean, the pressure's on. Like, you can't just make a bowl game, in my opinion. I think you got to do better because, that was just one soundbite from a press conference. He's also talked about, like, twice during press conferences last season of, oh, don't worry, we're going to be in the college football playoff mix, and things are going to be a lot different. So the pressure's on to get there. Yeah,
and look, if Beamer went out there and went 4-8 or 5-7 again, I think we're all pretty confident in saying he's probably not going to be the head coach in 2027 because he doesn't have a ton of success to fall back on. You'd be talking about through 6 seasons at that point in time, the majority of them, or half of them at that point, would have been disappointments in not making bowl games, compared to Dabo Swinney, who, again, has just been a head coach for a longer period of time, going back to 2008 when he took over in the interim and obviously took over as a full-time head coach, after that. They've obviously been to the national championship, won the national championship, been to a ton of college football playoffs, so his leash is a little bit longer, but I think we're kind of at a critical point with Dabo Swinney of like, okay, are you able to get this thing back into being in the mix for the national championship and being a legitimate title threat? I know they made the playoff last year, but nobody looked at that Clemson team that won the ACC and said, oh yeah, this is a team that can definitely go on a deep run and be hoisting the trophy, come late January. We haven't really looked at any Clemson team like that in 4 or 5 years, basically. And again, it's kind of similar to the Pittsburgh thing with Mike Tomlin. Like, it's one thing to just consistently be good, be a winning team, make the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. But if you get to the point where you're not competitive enough in the playoffs and you don't believe you can go on deep runs and make a run for a Super Bowl, or in this case, the national championship, then where do you strike that balance, right? And there's no doubt, Dabo Swinney is the greatest coach Clemson has ever seen. There will be a statue of him, plaques of him, history books written about him for years and years to come. But right now, it's like, okay. And again, he's embracing the portal. He's doing things that he has been a little bit more resistant to in the past couple of years. And if he can get them back to being an 11, 12-win team in the regular season, winning the ACC and being a legitimate threat for the national championship, this conversation stops. But as of right now, we're trending towards the direction of, yeah, you're probably still going to be good, but not to where you were.
And I mean, here's the thing. I mean, what is it going to take for Clemson to really move on from Dabo? I mean, this is kind of like a Mike Tomlin situation or John Harbaugh where, you know, like Dabo's won more, I would say, because he's got 2 national championships and has been to the playoff a handful of times at this point. But that was besides the 1 year they made in the first team of the first year of the 12-team playoff. I mean, the last time he made like the 4-team playoff and made it to the national championship was pre-COVID. So, I mean, for Clemson, I mean, what is their current standard? Like, obviously, it's going to be making the playoff, but what happens if Dabo falls short of that again? What happens if Clemson goes 8-4 or 7-5? I mean, are we talking about, you know, Dabo getting, like, is Clemson really going to pull the trigger on the coach that's been there for as long? Like, again, as long as Tomlin and Harbaugh were at their respective stops. I mean, that's how long Dabo has been at Clemson for.
I lean towards saying no, but at the same time, I look at a place like, and look, Penn State is more of a traditional blue blood in college football than what Clemson is, because again, Clemson was a program that really didn't gain national prominence until Dabo Swinney took them to those heights about a decade ago. But I think Penn State shows that even having a lot of success like James Franklin was having, they get sick of it after a while and will make a change. Now, again, I think Penn State's going to live to regret that because they shouldn't have done that. And I don't think Matt Campbell is going to go out there and suddenly lead that program to a national championship. But that's kind of where we are in college sports as of right now. And as great a coach as Dabo Swinney has been at Clemson, if you're toiling around being a 7-8 win to maybe 9-win team every single year that's not a threat for the national championship, at some point they would say, all right, we need to change something here. Now, I think I don't know if Dabo lets himself get fired, if that makes sense. I think it comes to a point where if Dabo sees the writing on the wall enough, he would just walk away. And I think that is a better look for everybody if that does end up happening. Because I'd be really, really shocked if Clemson actually fired the guy. You know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah, I don't think you can necessarily. You give him the option to go out on his own terms, but this is a huge year for both programs just because at South Carolina, like they have to do better. Like you can't just barely scrape by and make a bowl game. Like you got to get some real ground made up and probably win 8 or more games. And at Clemson, in the ACC, with actually using your resources to your advantage now, you would hope Clemson's able to win at least 9 to 10 games, especially in that conference. I mean, I think that is a realistic expectation for Clemson after such a disappointing year, and then you go retool in the offseason.
Well, and again, this was supposed to be the prove-it year for Clemson, right? Because, and I was one of the people, I had them as like one of the best 4 or 5 teams in the country because of what they returned, and this was going to be the year where Dabo Swinney says, hey, look, doing things the old-fashioned way still works, and it didn't. It blew up in their face, right? And, you know, you're losing a lot of talent to the NFL from that team. Back to the drawing board, recruiting out of high school, bringing in the most portal guys you ever brought in, and we'll see. But I think the entire state of South Carolina is going to garner a lot of attention for what the future of these two programs is based on what they do in 2026.
And the real question for Clemson is, who the heck's their quarterback going to be?
It's also a good question.
We're really relying on Vizina here?
Yeah, Vizina got the one start for Clemson last year. It wasn't. Was that against SMU? If I remember correctly.
Yes,
it wasn't.
So.
It wasn't great.
No.
So yeah, what do you do? We'll see. But a lot of questions to be answered about both programs here in the state of South Carolina. It is a Wednesday. That means it's Would You Rather Wednesday coming up next. Going to talk some college football announced teams to wrap up hour number 1. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Beltry with you on your Wednesday here in the game. right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Points. Our head Jack Felcher wrapping up hour number 1 here on your Wednesday. It's time for Would You Rather Wednesday. Jack, I came across this post from Chris Vanini of The Athletic in reference to polling their audience on what their favorite college football broadcast teams are. And I guess no surprise, the combination of Fowler, Herbstreit, and Holly Rowe, the biggest broadcast team that'll be doing the national championship coming up on Monday, ends up at the top of the list with 32.3% of the vote. Sean McDonough, Greg McElroy, and Molly McGrath coming in second there in the Athletic polling. My question for you today on Would You Rather Wednesday is, would you rather have that legacy crew of Fowler, Herbstreit, and Holly Rowe on the call for the national championship, or somebody else on Monday night?
I'm going to be honest. This is a hot take. I would take a different crew.
I don't think that's a hot take, actually.
Don't get me wrong. I like Fowler. I like Herbstreit. Holly Rowe's fine. What I would say is I actually like the secondary crew a lot better. I think Sean McDonough is a great broadcaster. I love hearing him broadcast NHL games, especially in playoff time. I think he does a great job with college football. I know he's done some Monday Night Football before in the past in previous years.
Yeah, he was Gruden's partner on Monday Night Football for a while.
He was Gruden's partner after, I think, Tirico
left to go back to NBC.
So, I mean, McDonough is a great broadcaster. Not to mention, here's another hot take for you. I actually think Greg McElroy might be a better color guy than Kirk Herbstreit. Just my opinion there. And honestly, Molly McGrath is probably better than Holly Rowe. So I would say, yeah, I would take McDonough, McElroy, and Molly McGrath over the A team here.
And I know you guys got to talk about this on Friday. I still couldn't speak at that point in time, so I get to weigh in. It seemed like on Thursday night, Fowler lost his fastball a little bit. Like he was Friday night. It seemed like Fowler lost his fastball. He was all over the place talking about, the Miami Ole Miss game, the Carson Beck story. He got the score wrong at one point in time. Like, I don't know if he's having a bad night, but that just seemed very off for Fowler, who again has done a great job for a very long time. Is like, is he starting to slip? Like, I think people get tired of Herbstreit because he's everywhere, right? Like he's the face of college football from like a broadcasting standpoint. He's doing Thursday Night Football now on the NFL side of things. He shows up on every single talk show, it seems like, to talk about what's going on. Like, I think there's a little bit of an overkill with like, oh, I just see Kirk Herbstreit so much, I get tired of him. But I'm with you. I really like the McDonough-McElroy Booth pairing. They've done a really good job. There's a lot of guys lower on this list too. Like, I'm a big fan of Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge on NBC.
They're a good crew too.
And Noah Eagle, he's freaking younger than I am. He might be your age. He does a really good job. Obviously, his dad is a great broadcaster, and I an Eagle there. But I think they do a really good job. I go back and forth on Gus Johnson. Like, I like Gus Johnson in smaller doses. And of course, he has the calls where he's losing his mind, losing his voice, and all that kind of stuff. I just I don't know if I want that in a national championship game necessarily.
I'll tell you one underrated crew that if I couldn't pick the top, let's say the top two from ESPN, if there's another crew I would certainly pick. And I think South Carolina had them for a few games this year. I know they had them in Atlanta. Bob Wischusen, Louis Riddick, and Chris Budden. I think, Wischusen's a great broadcaster, number one. Louis Riddick might be, of any former player on this list, he might be one of the most intelligent, smartest guys. Hearing him just talk about football on a broadcast. I mean, the guy is a very good broadcaster, and him and Wischusen are very good together.
I think it was the Ole Miss game that he was just brutally honest about what was going wrong with South Carolina. And I think we talked about it on that Monday of him just like pointing out things that didn't make sense to him about the way the team was performing, things that they were doing. And I appreciate that honesty. And he seems to do that in a lot of the games where if he sees something that he thinks is wrong, he's not afraid to really call it out there. Now, again, Fowler, Herbstreit, Holly Rowe, they're never going to get removed from the national championship game until they start retiring or whatever. But I have seen the tide start to shift a lot of how people perceive, and it's less about Holly Rowe. It's more about Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit, of how that pairing's being received now as time goes on.
When are we going to get Alyssa Lang calling one of these, as a sideline reporter? Like,
So she pops up occasionally.
yeah, she's doing the NBA now.
She is.
Did see that. She's mainly with SEC
And
Network.
obviously killing it in the in-studio stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I don't know. I mean, I think she would be. I'm surprised she's not on one of these lists here. I mean, I know there's a lot of great sideline, reporters here from ESPN and these different, companies, but I'm really surprised Alyssa Lang has not gotten the call up yet to
I can't remember what pairing she works with in the booth, because it's not. She typically is on the sidelines when there's a lot of games going on. I forget who her.
I think it's the secondary SEC Network crew, because Kubelik is the sideline guy with the Tom Hart and Jordan Rogers.
Yeah, I think you're right. But anyways, we'll hear Fowler, Herbstreit, and Holly Rowe on the call. 7:50, by the way, the kick time for the national championship.
Not bad.
It's better than it was, but let's be honest. If you're going to advertise it as 7:30, kick off at 7:30, please.
I agree.
I'll get off my soapbox now. Hour number 2, 2014 college football playoff. We'll tell you about it next. All right, welcome back in. Hour number 2. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Again, we're getting to men's basketball coming up here in just a minute. But as you heard me mention there at the end of that last segment, we're only days away, not only from the national championship to wrap up the 2025 college football season, but learning what the future format of the playoff is going to be. Jack, you're a big Star Wars fan, right?
I am.
We're all familiar with the meme of Adam Driver as Kylo Ren shouting "more" from one of the more recent Star Wars movies. Can't remember which one that was.
Episode 8.
Episode 8, okay. You would know better than I would. That's what I imagine it's like inside the meetings when it comes to the playoff format, because we went from 4, and now we're at 12, and it really looks like we're about to go to 16. January 23rd is the official deadline. It had been December 1st. They bumped it up to January 23rd, but we'll learn the future of this format for starting next year by then when these leaders do decide what they're going to do. But here's the hang up. It seems that most everybody is on board with 16, including the SEC, led by, obviously, Greg Sankey. The other conferences seem to be in line with that, with the exception of the Big Ten, because Tony Petitti is still pushing for now a 24-team college football playoff, not necessarily next year. Here's the caveat. He said, the reporting is, that he's willing, the Big Ten that is, to accept a 16-team playoff for a couple of years with the expectation that you move to 24 in like 28 or 29 or 29 or 30 or something along those lines. This just keeps getting more and more out of hand, it seems like.
It is. I mean, where does it ever end? I mean, with the 12 teams currently, you have the 13th team mad that they didn't get in, and then now if we went to 16, it'd be the 17th team is not happy. So you're always going to have someone left a little bit upset, and that's just how it's going to go. But there has to be a cap at some point of we can't ever get to like 64 teams, right?
You would think not, but I mean, what the college basketball tournament. I don't know if they ever foresaw themselves getting to 64, but here we are, and it's great. We obviously love it very much, but college football is a little bit different because we've kind of been stoked in the history of the less is more when it comes to postseason formats, and I think 12's great. Like, I've thoroughly enjoyed these two 12-team playoffs. Yeah, there have been some tweaks, and we'll see what they do in terms of buys and all that kind of stuff going forward if they like to continue it, but I think you've got a good, solid field. That's the right number, right? Because I look at, and the next round on Twitter put out a mock bracket of what a 24-team playoff would have looked like this year based on seeding, and this would include automatic qualifiers because that's what the Big Ten's pushing for as well. And I look at this, and you're letting more teams in, so Southern Cal, Arizona, Pitt, Texas, Houston, Utah, Vanderbilt, Virginia, just to name a few, Notre Dame as well. And I'm like, I don't think we really get to a different result at the end of the day. I think we still end up with mostly the same teams in the Final Four and national championship, but it's all about having more access and being in the playoff. Expanding the playoff means more money, more revenue, more TV ratings, all those kind of things, which unfortunately, when we talk about the changes in the world of college sports, it always boils down to money. Like, this has never been about the fan experience. This has never been about what's best for college football as a whole. It's always been about money, ratings, revenue, and all those kind of things, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
No, it's not. It's not. So, I mean, would you be? I think everyone would probably be open to a 16-team playoff. I mean, it's adding 4 more teams. The problem is, and the dilemma is, what does that 16 teams look like? Like, is it like how many? Like, are we doing auto bids for the SEC, the Big Ten? I mean, it's 16 teams, and in theory sounds great because you get more teams into the playoff and creates more competition. But it's how those teams are divvied up. Like, it would obviously be probably a lot different from what we have right now.
I think it's worth noting, and this is an article that was posted the other day by Heather Dinich on ESPN. It said there are some decision makers, particularly in the SEC, who would support a field that included the 16 best teams without guarantees to conference champions, but also a realization that excluding Group 5 is a highly unlikely scenario. And I think that's where a lot of people, including myself, have been at over these past couple of years. We expanded this out because, look, the 4-team playoff was fine, and it took the best 4 teams. Sometimes that included 2 teams from the SEC. Sometimes that included 2 teams from the Big Ten. But if they ended up being the best are included in the best 4 teams in the country at the end of conference championship weekend, so be it. It just seems very complicated and convoluted that now we've gotten to this point with automatic qualifiers and all that kind of stuff. And then you have the thing like, well, Duke won the conference, but they weren't ranked, so they didn't get in. So that adds in 2 G5 teams. Like, I'd be fine at 12, 16, whatever it may be, to just take the top 16. And if you're good enough as a conference champion or as a G5 team, quite frankly, you should be in the top 16 anyway. That's always been my hang up is like, if you're, especially as we expand this thing out, if you're good enough to compete for a national championship, you shouldn't have any problem being ranked in the top 16 when it matters.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I totally agree with you here. And, I definitely do think we need to make sure with a 16-team playoff, it's fine to divvy out some auto bids and whatnot. I think the SEC, after this recent playoff run, they're still going to get a big say in what happens with a potential 16-team playoff. My thing is, though, they really did not do well in the playoff, haven't done well in bowl games for years now. I think giving them a handful of auto bids maybe isn't necessarily the right idea. Honestly, I wish we would just go to a point where it's, yes, the best teams get in. Doesn't matter what conference you're from, if it's G5, if it's Power 4, as long as you're one of the top 16 ranked teams at the end of the year, you're in the playoff. I just think that creates much better competition in these games rather than, we got to make sure we get the 4 best SEC teams in. We got to get the 4 best Big Ten teams in. And then a few from these other conferences. We got to get a G5 in. That's just not making it. If we're expanding the playoff, you got to make sure it is a better version than what we have right now.
And with automatic qualifiers, because, again, right now we're just talking about conference champions being in. Like, all right, well, you prove that you win the conference, you get in automatically, okay, whatever. But if you kind of go down the path of what the Big Ten's trying to do here with having 3 to 4 auto bids for the SEC and the Big Ten, as well as at large, is that you can get more teams in, obviously. And yeah, there are some years like this year, if we were just taking the top 16, the SEC would have gotten 7 teams in the playoff. That would legitimately be half the field, which that's great for the SEC. Other years, you may only get 3 or 4 teams in. It really ebbs and flows where, yeah, there could be some years where absolutely the top 4 teams in the SEC and the top 4 teams in the Big Ten deserve to be in the playoffs. But other years, it's like, maybe it's only the top 3. Maybe it's only the top 2. And especially with how much parity is in college football, there's no telling what these conferences are going to look like from a competitive standpoint in the next handful of years. I'm just more like, if we're going to expand it out, just leave it wide open of like, all right, here's this line you have to get over from a ranking standpoint. And yes, I know that still gives a lot of power to the committee, which I'm still not a fan of necessarily. But it's like, hey, you want to be in, be ranked above 16th or be ranked 16th or better, and you're in. No questions about it, no questions asked. Like, it just seems like we're getting down the path of making this more and more complicated, which goes back to the adage that you hear a lot now. Nobody hates college football more than the people that run college football, because fans aren't asking for this, right? We as the consumer of the sport aren't saying, yeah, we definitely need more teams. Yeah, we need auto bids. Like, no, we just want to watch. And here's the thing. The reason why they can make these decisions, because they know we're going to watch regardless. Whether it's 4, 8, 12, 16, 24, 32, 64, 68, 96. If there's college football being played, we are so addicted as a sports-loving society, especially in the Southeast. We're going to watch regardless, no matter how many teams are in this thing.
Yep. So, I mean, you're right. I mean, we'll watch regardless, but I think 16 is a good number to be at. It's a nice round number, and I think anything more than that is just a bit much. Because then we're talking about now with 16, you're getting borderline 10-2 teams in. Potential, like if
Vanderbilt got left out at 10-2.
Exactly. So you're getting some 10-2 teams in, but it's not going to be like that every year. At some point, this is going to lead to 3-loss regular season teams getting in, like 9-3. And if this were last year with Alabama, Miami, and Ole Miss, and South Carolina all getting left out, and they got put in this hypothetical 16-team playoff, that's probably good, but not every year is going to be like that. You might have some teams that aren't deserving at 9-3 getting in, or a 10-2. So we'll see. I mean, it's a big decision that has to be made here, but I think it's been talked about enough to where it's like, yeah, this probably should and will happen.
Also, no indication as of right now that anything's going to change in terms of the bowls being included in the playoff, whether it be 12, 16, or whatever we're going to do going forward. And look, I love bowl games, and I love the prestige of the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl and all that kind of stuff and what they were, throughout my lifetime up to this point. But to me, the bowls have become the biggest hindrance in the college football playoff. We all looked at those first round games and said, man, look at how electric this atmosphere is. We saw the numbers of what Ole Miss pulled in from a revenue standpoint of hosting that playoff game, against Tulane and all these other teams that have buys. You're waiting at the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, just in these kind of soulless NFL stadiums for these corporate bowl events that just don't quite have the same vibe and don't give you an advantage either. Like, again, Georgia's playing in Georgia's playing in New Orleans for their second round game off a bye. Texas Tech is playing in Miami. Where's the advantage to that? There isn't one. And then we're doing a second bowl game for the semifinals, and that's weird. The bowls have become an afterthought. Like, I would love to see us just get to the point where just all of these games are on campus sites up until, at the very, very least, the semifinals, like we did with the 14 playoff. If you want to tell me the Sugar Bowl and the Rose Bowl, your national semifinals every single year on New Year's Day, that's fine. But make all the other rounds before that on campus.
I agree. I think definitely the first and if a 16, it would still be with 16. It would be 4 games to win the national championship. Correct? Like
you can structure where there's buys too, which is something that they have talked about. So we don't know if it would be straight up 16 where nobody gets buys. You'd have like 1 and 2 get buys. So that's up for debate as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, the first 2 rounds, like, let's have them at home sites, right? Like, I think that should definitely be the case. Round 3 should definitely be at bowl sites, and then you have your national championship. So, and also, are we a fan of having the Rose Bowl be the national championship game? Like not like the Rose Bowl game, but the Rose Bowl stadium hosting the national championship. Are we down with that?
Honestly, no.
No?
Look, I love the prestige of what the Rose Bowl is. If you're playing a game there that is not the Rose Bowl, it's not the same thing to me. You know what I mean? And look, we used to do the rotating things with the BCS where the actual Rose Bowl itself, the Texas SoCal National Championship was the actual Rose Bowl game, and that's awesome. Just playing at the Rose Bowl doesn't quite do it for me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, and I see that argument out there a lot. We should end the season with a national championship of the Rose Bowl. Don't necessarily agree. I love the Rose Bowl, love the prestige behind it, but I don't need that as my national championship venue every single year.
That's fair.
So, again, January 23rd, the deadline. We'll see what the leaders of being college football end up coming up with, but it seems like more change is indeed on the horizon as we continue to evolve with the 12-team, potentially 16-team college football playoff. Men's basketball back in action tonight. We'll get into this matchup against Arkansas, what Coach Pierce's team needs to do to get themselves back in the win column in the SEC. That's coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyra and Jack Feltry on your Wednesday on the game.
If you're out there looking for a local, reliable HVAC service for your home or your business in the Midlands, reach out to our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating, KrantzCooling.com, Krantz, cooling with a K, KrantzCooling.com, or give Justin Krantz, the general manager over there, and his team a call, 803-755-0793. I've had Krantz Cooling out to my home several times. They did a mini split for me in the garage. They've checked out all the other units at my house to make sure they're running in tip-top shape. Love my experience so much that when my mom moved to Irmo, I got them to go out to her home too. They put in 2 mini splits for her. They handle all her HVAC needs as well. They could do the same for you. KrantzCooling.com or 803-755-0793. Since 1983, Krantz Cooling, their team has been providing great service to business owners and families in the Midlands. They can do the same for you.
All right, welcome back in. Extra Points, Our Ed Jack Felcher with you on your Wednesday here on the game. We'll push basketball a little bit further down the road here because we have some breaking news. I led off the show talking about how funny it was, the Jalewis Solomon thing that happened yesterday in the span of Jack seeing the Primate movie. Jalewis Solomon goes from being in the transfer portal to being out of the transfer portal and returning to South Carolina. And, Jack, something similar has happened for another notable name that we thought was departing the team.
Yes. So Josiah Thompson, who previously entered the transfer portal officially on January 5th, has returned to South Carolina. He has withdrawn his name from the portal. Gamecock Central's confirmed the news now. On3's Pete Nakos initially reported the news, as well as many other outlets in the media space. But, yeah, this is a pretty big deal considering you're getting a guy back with a ton of starting experience. Josiah has been a starter at South Carolina for 2 seasons. And, look, I know he did not have a good season in 2025, but he was a all-SEC freshman in 24. So there is something to work with there of getting him to a point where he can be a really good offensive lineman. He'll have a chance now to work with Randy Clements, and he's one of 3 offensive linemen from the 2025 team returning with starting experience. That list includes Thompson, Shed Surratt, and Nolan Hay, and that's basically covering everything right there.
This is so interesting because the last thing we heard about Josiah Thompson, I guess it was towards the end of last week, was it really seemed like he was going to go to Miami, right? Following Virgivius Jacobs as well. And look, Miami's not shy when it comes to throwing money around, and depending on where you get your information or what you've heard, maybe Josiah Thompson was asking for a little too much compared to how he played a season ago at Carolina, and they felt good with, at the time, seemingly letting him walk away and go pursue other opportunities, much like a lot of the guys in that offensive line room ultimately did. As you mentioned prior to this announcement, you had 2 guys with starting experience that were set to return with Shed Surratt and Nolan Hay, but now you have 3. And when Josiah Thompson, not that I was shocked by it, right? Last year was bad. Like, again, he had his ups and downs in his freshman year, as you expect anybody playing left tackle in the SEC as a true freshman would have. But we expected more out of him this past year, and he just didn't do it. He looked like he took several step backs and regressed quite a bit, was getting put on his butt a lot. It just looked really, really bad. That being said, I was intrigued by the prospect of him working with the new offensive line coach, and I think that goes for everybody that was on the offensive line a year ago, because it's like, okay, was it just these guys not being developed good enough, or was it just that these guys just weren't that good, right? And we weren't going to get an answer to that until we saw them, play under a different offensive line coach here at South Carolina, and Randy Clements being that guy coming in, taking over for Lonnie Tease. And now we'll get to learn. Now, here's the thing, especially with Jacarius Peak coming in out of the transfer portal from NC State, Josiah Thompson's got to earn that spot, right? As everybody does in that room. But it was easy to assume last year that Josiah Thompson was going to start at left tackle once again following his freshman year. That's not the case. Like, he's really starting over from zero, as everybody in that room is with a new position coach. And I'm intrigued to see if Randy Clements can maybe get Josiah Thompson back to where he was, if not better.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the goal here, right, in bringing him back. And I wonder, because the rumored schools that were, targeting him or he was, interested in were Miami and Georgia. And I you're right. I thought he was going to end up at Miami, and that would be that. And who knows what happened, right? Don't want to speculate, but can imagine something happened there to where maybe it had to do with money, maybe it was financially, and asking for too much, and just didn't work out. Who knows? But him coming back to South Carolina just screams that something did not go according to plan, and now he's coming back to the Gamecocks, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, Shane Beamer obviously had to accept him coming back and welcome him back, and that's all taking place.
That is a really interesting point that you bring up there, because and Beamer's talked about this before. When you have a guy departing into the transfer portal, you cross him off the list. Say, okay, that's now a spot that we have open that we can fill with somebody else. And with the sheer amount of guys that, Beamer's brought in the transfer portal, because here's the thing, Josiah Thompson did not come back for free. You had to pay him something. What that number is, we don't know, and we may never know, because those numbers obviously aren't made public. But, it was one of those things where he's probably thankful that there's an opportunity to come back, because Coach Beamer could have said, especially with how many guys they've gotten out of the portal so far, with hopefully more to come, hey, man, we just don't have a spot for you. Now, go pursue that opportunity. Again, we don't know what those conversations are. We may never know what those conversations are, but they were willing to accept Josiah Thompson back, and we'll see if that ends up being a positive for him and the team or not. And going back to the point about potentially asking South Carolina for maybe more than what it was worth, that's just the nature of the sport right now. And I'm not faulting these players for doing that, because there's no set market, right? Everything's off of speculation and rumor and all that kind of stuff. And if I was a 18, 19-year-old kid, I try and get as much money as I could out of these schools too, because it's the wild, wild west out there. So, while the production certainly didn't match it, he's not the only one that potentially would have been asking for more than what they probably deserved based on how they played a year ago. But that's just how things are now.
Yeah, I mean, that is how it is now. And you're right. He's going to have to go out here and earn a spot. I mean, him coming back now basically tells us, like, look, you're not going to automatically be the starter in 2026 at left tackle like you have the last 2 years. And South Carolina's brought in guys that would probably start over him right now. Like, Peak is definitely going to start over a guy like Josiah Thompson. Can he earn a spot back? And here's the other question. Is he going to play tackle? Like, what if South Carolina feels good about the options that they have at both the tackle spots? Because let's assume Peak's going to start one of the tackle positions, whether it's left or right. There's one other spot open. Let's say he doesn't earn that spot. Can he move to guard? Can he play guard, right? We've heard South Carolina talk about having some versatility on the offensive line. Is Josiah one of those guys that is stagnant to just playing tackle, or can he play guard as well? So he's going to have to really have a good spring and good fall camp to get himself back in a starting spot, I would imagine.
I'm looking at his bio on Gamecocks Online, and it doesn't mention him playing other spots. Obviously, at Carolina, he's only played the left tackle spot, so I don't know what his flexibility is when it comes to moving around on the offensive line. Again, you'd like to think that Jacarius Peak's probably your left tackle just because of his experience and his track record at this point. But, hey, with Case and Henry gone, right tackle's up for grabs. And, again, it's easier said than done to switch somebody from one side of the line to the other. But maybe that's where he finds his success. I don't know. But he's found himself back in the mix for these jobs here at Carolina. But, again, he's got to go out there and win it because nothing, especially now, is going to be handed to him.
No, I mean, he was a tough watch in 2025. I'm not going to lie. There were just so many times off the left side where he would just get beat, and it would be ugly. It would be ugly. So he's got to really make adjustments and improvements. This is a big year for him. This is going to be his junior year. So, this could be his draft year if he has a really good season, but he has to earn that starting spot. And it's going to be tough because there's only 5 spots in the offensive line for starters, and this is going to be a room with double-digit guys when it's all said and done. And a lot of these transfers are not coming here just to be a backup. They're going to end up starting and contend to start. So we'll see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, and again, I'm just purely curious to see what he looks like with a different offensive line coach that has different philosophies and different ways of doing things, different teachings and all that kind of stuff. Because, again, this guy was a star coming out of high school and was, a 5-star for a reason. That's not for nothing. They're clearly the evaluators of him in high school saw enough to warrant him to be thought of as one of the best players at his position in the entire country. That's still in there somewhere. Can Randy Clements get that out of him in a way that Lonnie Teasley wasn't able to? We'll see. But now he has the opportunity at least.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be real interesting seeing what kind of development happens under Clem with not just Thompson but all these guys. And, it'll be very interesting to see if he can earn that job back as a starter in 26.
So there's your breaking news in the morning, again, coming out basically about 30 minutes ago, and Jack's got a story up on GamecockCentral.com about it if you want to go and read that. But Josiah Thompson is returning to South Carolina after entering his name into the transfer portal about 10 days ago. And, again, we'll see how he kind of factors into this new-look offensive line room going into 2026. Okay, on the other side, we will indeed talk about Gamecock men's basketball as they get set to go on the road tonight. Late tip, taking on Arkansas at 9 o'clock, and see if they can get back in the win column in the SEC. That's coming up next. It is the Gamecocks. It's not the Gamecock Central. It's the Extra Point. It's Howard Head and Jack Feltry on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Before we get into Gamecock men's basketball, it's time for Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. We'll stay on the hardwood because last night, number 2 Iowa State traveled to Lawrence, Kansas, taking on an unranked Kansas Jayhawks team that had gotten off to a bumpy start in Big 12 play, 1-2 going into the contest. And the Kansas Jayhawks took it to the Cyclones 84-63. Kansas shot 51% from the field and 50%, 12 of 24 from 3, and handed the Cyclones their first loss of the year. I think we only have 4 undefeated teams left in men's basketball now after that loss.
So you got Nebraska is one of them for sure.
Vandy's still undefeated.
Vandy. Who's at the top right now? Is it Arizona? Are they still? I know Michigan lost.
Michigan lost the other day. Arizona's still undefeated.
That's 3.
Nebraska, Vanderbilt. I think that's it. Is that it?
That might be it.
That might be it. Okay, maybe it was only 3. It's dwindling down. And by the way, who would have had Vanderbilt as one of the last teams standing from an undefeated standpoint, let alone in the SEC?
Who do you think is the last team standing from an undefeated standpoint?
Oh man,
Give a prediction.
Perhaps it's an easy answer. I mean, Arizona's going to be a tough team to bring down. The little bit I've got to watch them this year, like when they played Florida at the beginning of the year, they look good, man. Again, number 1 team for a reason. I just kind of give them the benefit of the doubt there, I guess.
Yeah. I'm going to go Nebraska. Just the way they've been playing. I know it's the Big Ten. I know it's a tough conference, but they've looked really good so far.
Yeah, and look, there's only Indiana was the last undefeated team in men's college basketball, however many years ago that was. So all these teams are going to lose at some point. We'll just see who ends up being able to hang on the longest. Unfortunately, Carolina is not undefeated when it comes to men's basketball. In fact, they face a pretty pivotal game tonight as they go on the road to Arizona. Again, tip-off at 9 o'clock, pregame coverage starting at 8:30 right here on 107.5. Again, 100.3 the game out in Myrtle Beach. And, you know, I think we throw around the must-win thing a little too much sometimes, but there's a big difference, in my opinion, in going on the road to Auburn this weekend as a team that's 1-3 in conference play compared to a team that's 2-2 in conference play.
No, you're right. I mean, for South Carolina, every game is a must-win at this point, but this one certainly is going to be a really big game. Like, you have to find a way to win. You can't go 1-3 to start this slate, and knowing you got to go to Auburn this weekend, that's another tough game. You could potentially be 1-4 going into next week, and that's a really tough hill to climb up from there with what would be 14 games remaining in conference play. So, look, South Carolina at this point has to go over 500 to even get considered, I would say, for the NCAA tournament. I don't even think that's a realistic talking point right now. This team just has to start stacking some wins together. And the funny thing is, Tyler, they've been playing pretty well, I would say, to start conference play. Like Vanderbilt, yeah, okay, Vanderbilt beat them. Nobody's beaten Vanderbilt this year. The last 2 games have been pretty good for the most part. And I say for the most part because they played pretty well at LSU. First half was their best half of basketball all season long. Second half was pretty rough, but they ended up closing out that game pretty well, made some tough shots or some big shots down the stretch to pull away and win by 10 points. We see them against Georgia. Play really well in the first half, take a 6-point lead, shoot about 50% from the field. That second half, they had an 8-point lead, 8 minutes to go, and they make 2 of their next 13 shots. So for South Carolina, my key to this game against Arkansas, a team that is going to be really tough to beat, number 17 in the country, John Calipari, Nick Pringle, all that. You have got to play a full 40 minutes to the best of your ability. You can't just play a good first half and go through the motions in the second half. From start to finish, you've got to play really well, and hopefully you're shooting up near that 50% mark by the end of the day.
And, you know, I go back to that game against Georgia over the weekend, and this is one thing that Coach Pierce talked about after the game was how well they played defensively in that game. Again, they held Georgia 23 points under their season average for total points scored. Like, they did enough from a defensive standpoint where they should have been able to win that game. But yeah, when you go cold and don't make any field goals for the last 5.5 minutes of the game, and don't forget, they had a pretty bad end of the first half as well for about the last 4 minutes or so where they weren't making any of those field goals either. So for effectively a fourth of the game, you weren't having shots go in. That's not a recipe for success against any team in the country, let alone tough teams in the SEC like Georgia or Arkansas coming up tonight. And look, this is a Calipari team that's very talented, but don't forget, Lamont Paris has won 3 out of 4 matchups against John Calipari. There is something about what a Coach Paris team does that does give Calipari fits, and they very nearly beat them in the SEC tournament last year that ultimately ended South Carolina's season. So Paris, to a degree, does have Calipari's number.
He does, and this Arkansas team is interesting because they're a pretty solid 3-point shooting team, top 15 in the country. They're shooting close to 40% from 3. The interesting thing about them, Tyler, they don't take a ton of threes. So it's at least just based on the stats, they seem like they'll take some threes, but they're pretty selective, it seems, when it comes to those 3-point shots. And they've got a few guys that are pretty good shooters on the outside. So if you're South Carolina, I think you're trying to force them to take more 2-point shots closer to the basket and see what happens from there. And if you're the Gamecocks on the other end, you got to shoot really well in this game. I mean, you can't go shoot the way you did in that second half against Georgia and LSU. Shoot like the team in the first half of those games, and you have a real chance in this one.
And you mentioned Arkansas, and you know, when they do take 3-point shots, pretty effective, but they don't take a high volume of them. That's something when they played against Auburn on Saturday. That was their first loss in conference play, 95-73. Auburn really pushed them to the outside in that first half. They made them attempt 17 3-pointers in the first half, which is not in line with what that Arkansas team tries to do. And is that a blueprint for success tonight? We'll certainly have to see, but you're right. Very talented team. Starts with Darius Acuff, who's one of the most talented freshmen in the entire country. He's projected to be a lottery pick in the draft coming up a little bit later on in the year. He leads the team in scoring, leads the team in assists, one of the best in the SEC in those two regards as well. So you have a guy, running the point there that can score and move the ball around a lot. So that defense is going to be tested quite a bit tonight.
Yeah, it definitely will be tested. And even in the losses that Arkansas has had this year, which are all really quality losses to this point, they haven't had what you would call a terrible 3-point shooting night. Like, even in those losses where, yes, they are taking some more threes because that's what teams are forcing them to do. Like, even in that Auburn game, they're still making some of their shots. So, for South Carolina, and this is also a very high-scoring team in Arkansas, almost averaging 90 points a game, you're going to have to really be good defensively in this game, and you're going to have to make the most of your shots. Like, that's just the simple fact of any of these games you play against quality teams in the SEC. That's why it's going to have to be on a game-in, game-out basis, and hopefully tonight is a night where it's much like last week against LSU, where you're just like, how are all these shots falling for the Gamecocks? This is just not normal.
You want to give you an interesting stat that I came up on?
Let's hear it.
And again, this is a really talented team and a name you're probably very familiar with Arkansas's Trevon Brazile, who's been around there for 20 years at this point in time. In his time facing South Carolina, the Gamecocks are 4-0 against Arkansas when holding Trevon Brazile to single-digit points. He scored 16 against them last year in the SEC tournament, but every other time when they've held him to single digits, the Gamecocks have won. So that could be big matchup tonight. He rotates between that 4 and that 5 spot. Again, Nick Pringle, who was on this team a year ago for South Carolina, going to be out there playing for them as well. So it's going to be a test, and on the road, late tip. That's all going to be in the advantage of Arkansas, and we'll see what Coach Paris' team rolls out there.
Yeah, let's just hope they're not getting smoked tonight at 11 o'clock p.m. whenever this game's over. Like, I want to go to bed seeing that South Carolina got a big win on the road. This would be a big win for their resume as well, would automatically be a quad 1 win. So a lot on the line tonight for the Gamecocks, and they really need this one.
Would you take South Carolina winning in double overtime?
No. Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, if they lose in double overtime, that's just like, come on, man. Like, that's keeping us up late.
I ask you this because did you watch any of Texas A&M and Tennessee last night?
I did not.
So Tennessee trailed for most of this game. They didn't end up taking the lead until very late there in the second half. Forces it into double overtime, and they pull off the 87-82 win against Texas A&M to improve to 2-2 in conference play. But that game legitimately took 3 whole hours, which I hope we don't do tonight.
College basketball in general should not take as long as it does. All these media timeouts, like the games should be a lot shorter than they are.
Are you familiar with the Elam ending?
No.
Well, maybe we save that for tomorrow, depending on how tonight's game goes. But there's a way to end basketball games that's a lot more efficient than what we do now. And when I first heard about this idea, I was very much opposed to it. But as time goes on, and I see how long some of the end of these game sequences can take, I'm more and more on board with it. Google Elam ending if you've never heard of it. It's a little bit radical, but I don't completely hate the idea, if you know what I mean.
I will look it up.
We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. Some interesting tidbits going on around the sports world that we'll hit on to wrap up the hour as well. It is the Extra Points Hour and Jack Feltry here on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Points. Our head Jack Belcher along with you here on your Wednesday on the game, wrapping up hour number 2. To follow up on what I mentioned about the Elam ending, if you didn't get a chance to look it up yet, it is a way to end basketball games where with a couple minutes to go, you turn the game clock off and you set a target score. It varies. I'm just looking at this here. You say like 8 points more than what the current team leading has, and then the first team to that score wins. That prevents all the fouling and all that kind of stuff to force free throws that really drag out those last couple minutes of the game. I think the NBA did this for the All-Star game a couple years ago.
This was what I was going to ask when I looked it up. When I saw that, I'm like, target score. That's what the NBA did.
Yes.
It was the year Kobe Bryant died. They did the All-Star game to, I forget exactly how the numbers broke up, but they were going to like 8 and 24 or something to coordinate with his numbers that he wore.
Right.
So they would do target scores, and they only did it for a few years before reverting back to the current format of just no defense. But yeah, that's immediately what I thought of as soon as I saw that.
Yeah, again, that would completely change everything for the ending of these games, and I don't really see them ever doing it, but I don't hate the idea considering how drawn out some of these games get. When you know the other team's not going to be able to come back, you know what I mean? Like, you're down 10 points with 30 seconds to go. Why are you fouling?
It's the most infuriating thing. That's what drags these basketball games out to being 2.5 hours. It's nuts.
Speaking of basketball, you sent me this, and I had to laugh because I kind of thought it was fake at first. LeBron James going to be wearing a special edition patch on his jersey commemorating his 23rd NBA season. Started the other day when they were taking on the Kings in Sacramento. Wear it throughout the rest of the year. It has multicolors on there, denoting for his time in Cleveland, Miami, and now Los Angeles, with kind of a silhouette of him throwing up the chalk like he does before the games. Okay, sure. I feel like this is an idea that he came up with himself. We don't know who came up with it, but this seems like LeBron would be like, hey, I need to wear a patch on my jersey commemorating my historic 23rd season in the NBA.
He'll never admit that because it's LeBron James we're talking about here, but this is totally up his alley. How can he make it all about himself? This is definitely it. Now, I understand why the patch is just now getting debuted with a few months left to go in the NBA season at the halfway point almost here. Because if you don't know, for those of you listening, Sacramento was where he made his NBA debut back in 2003 with the Cavs.
Do we need a patch for it, though?
But for I don't know. But here's my thing, though. This is what I was going to get into. Why not just have it for the entire season, then? Why not have the patch from the first game of the year to, well, I know he didn't play in the first game. He was hurt. But whenever he made his debut for the season, wear it then and just wear it throughout the rest of the year. Like, we know... We know, this has been his 23rd season for a few months now. So why are we just now doing this? And why is it even happening in general? I mean, I don't know. I get it's record-breaking, but I don't know.
I don't know. Just LeBron things, I guess. Also, one more thing to wrap up the hour. TJ Finley has a new home. This will be his 7th stop in his college football career as he is now committed to Incarnate Word, obviously the former home of Cam Ward a couple years ago, I'm assuming plays last year of college football. This is a dude that has been around for over half a decade, going all the way back to his time at LSU, spent time at Auburn, Texas State, Tulane, Western Kentucky, Georgia State more recently this past year, and finally, I think it comes to an end at Incarnate Word.
Talk about, the regression of all regressions in terms of the schools he's went to. LSU, Auburn, both SEC programs. It's great. Texas State, Tulane, you could say, is kind of a step up from Texas State. Then it's to Western Kentucky, then Georgia State, and now Incarnate Word. When he entered the portal, I was like, all right, well, somebody's going to pick him up from a G5 school, right? But, I mean, what level is Incarnate Word right now? FCS?
Yeah, they're still FCS.
So, I mean, he's taken huge regression from going from an SEC quarterback to all the way down to Incarnate Word. So,
and of course, his first start of his career was against South Carolina back in 2020. But for reference, his first year of college football was the season following Joe Burrow and the national championship team. To give you reference for how long he's been in college football.
And Joe Burrow's been in the NFL now for what? 5 seasons, 6 seasons. I mean,
Yeah.
it's since
Well,
2020.
he's been in the NFL as long as TJ Finley's been in college.
It's crazy. It's just absolutely nuts. I say we're not going to see anything like this ever again, but I mean, the rate at which guys transfer schools within 4 years could always increase. I mean, I don't think we'll ever see anything like this because COVID happened and whatnot, and you still have this guy having a year because of all these different things. But man, it's crazy to think about a guy going to 7 schools. Can you even imagine putting that on your LinkedIn resume?
Could you imagine having to transfer all those credits over and over again?
You
Talked about the other day. Transferring is not easy when you do it once, let alone 6 times.
You think this guy's graduated yet?
I would hope so. He better be a doctor by now. Yeah, I haven't even looked up. What if he's like still in like interdisciplinary studies, which means you don't have a major?
I wonder where he will have graduated from when it's all said and done.
It's a good question. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, TJ Finley wrapping up his college career, unless, I don't know, he sues the NCAA.
Unless he gets hurt and
medical red shirt, and he's 8, 9 years. It's getting ridiculous. That'll do it for the Extra Point. Up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game. All right, 11 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Just Tyler right now. Chris informed us a little while ago he's having some car trouble this morning. May get him on the AAA Heat and Air phone lines coming up in just a little bit later on in this hour since he couldn't be here in person. Wes Mitchell walking in even a little bit more late than usual, but he's got good reason for it. We always give Wes a hard time because he typically walks in right as the intro is playing, but he told me a moment ago as he's getting set to come in here now that some of the news this morning has him a little bit more delayed than usual. So we'll give him a pass for that because that is good reason to maybe be a couple minutes late here. Is, you know, whenever I'm planning out these shows, typically the night before, I always put things on rundown like, hey, we're going to talk about this. And, you know, in the period of the transfer portal, everything's very fluid because you'll get commitments, you'll get visits and all those kind of things kind of pop up, and we'll talk about them here and there. And sometimes you get guys that, well, remove themselves from the portal as well. I thought we were going to be talking about just Jalewis Solomon to lead off the show because he, within the span of about an hour, went into the portal and removed himself from the portal, and we'll get to that coming up in a moment. But an even bigger deal is the news we got about an hour ago when Josiah Thompson, who'd been in the portal basically since it opened about a week and a half ago, has now removed his name and will be returning to South Carolina in 2026.
Yeah, and, you know, I think, Tyler, this is one of those where we kind of kept saying, like, we knew there were going to be losses to the portal, especially on the offensive line. And it was very, very clear at one point that they were going to kind of just try to rebuild this entire thing. And I don't know about everybody else listening, but there did become a point where you're just kind of going, I was thinking, man, I mean, we knew there was going to be a rebuild, but this is a complete and total rebuild other than basically in terms of guys that have started, Shed Surratt and Nolan Hay. And so even when you're bringing in guys out of the portal that you really like and think you're going to help you and have experience, you are asking a lot. So, you know, I think a lot of people, and kind of looking at the reaction online, Josiah was one of the main couple of guys that South Carolina lost that I think people were kind of going, man, I wish he could have stuck it out. I wish we could have kept him, and I wish that he could get a shot in a different offense with a different coach and just, you know, not necessarily a different setting, which is what you would get going to the portal, but just an entirely different approach on the offense. And so, you know, Tro Ball was another guy that I was kind of like, man, that he's done some good things for South Carolina. He could be a building block type guy. And then he's off to, you know, to Texas A&M, which I think kind of showed that there's some talent there. But with Josiah, this is something, you know, there were rumors very, very early on that he may return. And we checked on it, and I was not getting that back. Like, I was hearing, like, no, he's pretty set on exploring these other opportunities, and you know, visited Georgia, visited Miami, and then started to really hear this yesterday that it was a possibility for him to come back. And then just before 10 o'clock this morning, he you know, officially was withdrawn from the transfer portal and made that official with South Carolina, I guess, starting classes this week, too. It's time for this stuff to kind of lock in. And, you know, guys, I think for the way you'd start to kind of put the pieces together on this offensive line, this is still somebody who's a high 4-star, 5-star guy. This is still somebody who has some ability. And I'll be very, very curious to see what his kind of next step in his career looks like at South Carolina under Randy Clements.
Well, and we were very honest about it in talking about him and this entire team this past year, particularly on the offensive line, for how much of a regression he had made. Because, again, he came in, highly touted guy, earned a starting spot on the offensive line as a freshman back in 2024, and he had his ups and downs. It wasn't a perfect year by any means, but that's kind of what you expect out of a freshman starting at such a tough spot like left tackle, you know, in the SEC. And we thought 2025 is going to be the year to take some steps forward and improve on that. It didn't happen. He took a lot of steps back and looked worse as a player in 25 than he did back in 2024. But when you make a change like Carolina did with Lonnie Teasley, he's the person that you put at the top of your list. Like, man, I'm excited to see what a new staff, what a new offensive line coach can do with him because, again, the talent is there. There's a reason why he was a 5-star coming out of high school. There's a reason why he earned that starting job so quickly here at Carolina because he does have that ability to some degree. It's just was Lonnie Teasley not able to maximize it the way that he needed to. And there was a lot of cases of Teasley and guys regressing, but the most recent and most glaring example was Josiah Thompson, and that's part of the reason why Lonnie Teasley isn't here anymore. So now we do get Randy Clements getting to work with Josiah Thompson. I don't know if it's a total rebuild, if you break him down and start over from scratch, or what you do, but a new set of eyes, a new philosophy of how to look at him and approach him when it comes to development is going to be taking place for the next couple months. And look, here's the thing, too. Especially with all the guys they've added out of the portal so far, he's got to earn a spot. He's not being handed anything. You know, Jacarius Peak looks like the leader in the clubhouse right now for left tackle just based on his own experience. So if Josiah Thompson wants to be playing this fall, he's got to go out there and earn it.
Yeah, he does. And, you know, I think, is there a possibility you look at Josiah at right tackle? You know, I mean, you kind of started to look at that tackle position and – you know, I think a lot of people thought, well, hey, Shivers is someone who's giving you some good backup reps. He can provide some depth there. And then he hits the portal as well. And so I think you were looking at that position and you were going, man, they went out and got literally what at the time was the number one offensive tackle in the portal in Peak. And, you know, that's an excellent get. But, you know, then, you know, we reported that Poku is going to be a guard, even though he's someone who's played guard or right tackle in his career, has played guard at ECU the last couple of years. That's really where he started to excel, was a kind of a raw type, you know, like jumbo athlete who really started to come into his own. And so I was like, well, maybe he's going to play some tackle. But no, the plan is for him to play guard. So I think you were kind of starting to wonder, like, all right, who's going to fill in that final tackle spot? And, you know, I think with Josiah, now you kind of open up that possibility for him to go play there. And really, you know, I think Josiah's been banged up a little bit. I think, obviously, he was in a spot last year where, like, I don't know if it's hard to maintain your confidence when things just aren't going your way. And, you know, I think we all thought Josiah was going to be one of the guys to take a step forward this past season. Typically, if you play that much as a true freshman, and especially at a position that is not easy to play as a freshman, typically you do take that big jump. And there were some reports out of spring, you know, from within the program that, hey, he looks poised to take another step forward. And for whatever reason, it just did not happen. And so I think if you're South Carolina, look at it this way, too. If you were getting Josiah Thompson out of the transfer portal, everybody would be saying, well, you know, he just needed to change his scenery. This is a former high 4-star, 5-star guy. The talent is there. Let's see what he can do under a new staff. And, you know, fortunately for South Carolina, you're bringing him back, and it is a new staff on offense. It is going to be a new approach. And I would say this. Josiah Thompson would not be back in a South Carolina uniform if he did not really, really want to be back. You know, Shane Beamer, he does leave the door open to an extent for guys to come back if they've entered the portal, but it is not an easy thing to do. Let's put it like we've seen it. We saw it with Gilbert Edmond, who actually, you know, transferred out and then came back. And you remember Beamer talking then, like, hey, we had long conversations about what this looks like, what you need to do to be able to come back into this program. To your point, Tyler, I think very safe to say there is not going to be hey, come back and we're promising you left tackle and we're giving you this, we're giving you that. Beamer has been pretty, I would say, stubborn, like in a good way. That has a negative connotation, but I mean it just in terms of the standard in terms of his culture really is not negotiable. And I think it just speaks to this is an in-state kid. Yes, he explored the portal. Yes, he made that decision. Now he made the decision to come back, but I don't think Josiah Thompson will be back at South Carolina if he didn't really, really want to be back at South Carolina.
Well, and I imagine, and again, we're not privy to the details in these numbers because they're not public, because that's not how college sports works compared to, pro sports. But I imagine he probably had to take a little bit less, right? And that was the conversation of when he went out in the portal, is like, hey, was he asking for too much that didn't match what his production on the field was? And maybe he thinks he can go find that elsewhere. And again, it seemed like Miami and Georgia were kind of close to maybe landing something with him. And were they not offering him what he thought he should have got? And then he says, you know what? I'm just going to keep going with where I've been at, take a little bit less, come back to South Carolina. We're not going to know those specific details, but, kind of given the nature of how you have to spend your money and the money Carolina's already spent with getting guys out in the portal, I don't imagine they were going to go out there and cut him some insane deal, in considering the fact that he took a step back, this past year. So maybe it's a little bit of humbleness of having to accept that you're not where you thought you were, and you have to go back out there and earn it.
Yeah, I think that's fair, man. I think that's absolutely fair. I think that's even with Jalewis Solomon coming, coming back, I guess, after never even actually entered the portal, by the way. Was reported he was going to enter the portal. I don't believe he was ever actually in there. But then I can say definitively it was not a situation of him entering, getting more money to come back. Like, that absolutely is not how they operate on stuff like that. So, yes, he did briefly decide to go in, then decided not to, and we'll be on this team this year. And I think Jalewis is someone too. We've been waiting for the potential to show with Jalewis as well. Like, I think there's some things where he's got to do what he needs to do to live up to that potential. But Jalewis is a 4-star, highly rated guy out of high school.
And look, he's not the first one, won't be the last one to enter your name in the portal and take it out relatively quickly. I will say last night might be a record for the quickest in and out of potentially in the portal, then deciding to come back, that I think we've seen up to this point.
Yeah, for sure. With the quickness. So it was so quick, though, like, all the national guys, all the national guys have portal access, essentially.
Right.
You can tell, even though, or we'll put it like this, a source with great portal access. And so they're just left and right, breaking news and stuff like that. And then, of course, Hayes, the kids hit up Hayes Fawcett and say, hey, I'm going in the portal. Can you do a graphic? And so all that stuff came out, and then all that stuff was just deleted. And I was like, wait, what happened? But there was not like hey, we deleted this because he's not going in anymore. So that's when me and Chris had to start like, all right, what is the deal here?
Right.
And found out, like, yes, he was going to enter, but then he decided not to.
Yeah, and Hayes Fawcett wasn't wrong for putting stuff out there about it.
It was not, and it was not.
It was correct information.
Yes, it was not a erroneous report.
Yeah, it's just the funny things about the transfer portal reality we live in. We'll talk more about it. Also talk about some visitors coming to campus here later on this week, as well as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Wednesday on the Game. All right, folks, let me tell you about our friends over at Integrated Media. Head on over to integratedmediainc.com for more information about their awesome services throughout the Midlands. They have been to my house. They have been to Chris's house. Let them come to your house as well and basically upgrade anything to do with your tech. Honestly, like,
they have very specific things they can do for you. But if you have other crazy ideas that you want to just bring to reality, throw it at them. I promise you, they're going to come up with a solution for you. Maybe it's just kind of going all in on that man cave, or maybe it's as simple as I want to hang the TV in the living room, make it look, professional, hide the wires, surround sound, and then have it all running off of a tablet as well. They can have your home security systems upgraded and running off the tablet. They can upgrade your Wi-Fi and your Ethernet internet as well. Again, that's our friends at Integrated Media at integratedmediainc.com.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Again, Chris got some car trouble, so hopefully we'll get him back here in studio. Coming up tomorrow, talking about the transfer portal again, news in the morning if you haven't heard it yet. Josiah Thompson has removed his name from the portal after entering it about a week and a half ago and is set to return for South Carolina. Jalewis Solon also entering and exiting the portal pretty quickly last night. He'll also be back for 2026. And look, entering and exiting the portal has become such common verbiage over these past couple of years. You don't really give it a second thought. But do you ever think about the concept of the portal of being like a place? I don't know if I'm the only one that does this, but when I think of people entering the portal, I envision they're going into this room or going into this building. But there's no physical portal. It does not exist. It's just kind of like a space or a place on the internet where your name is that coaches come and find you. There is no physical portal, but we talk about guys going in and out of it all the time.
There's no physical portal that you know of.
That I know of.
Yes.
What would that look like? Where would you put a physical portal if there had to be one? Would it have to be like central in the middle of America that everybody could get to easily?
No, I picture just every single football ops building having to have, an access point.
Like what do you call it? Not time travel.
Like a wormhole.
Yeah, like a wormhole. Like takes you from place to place. Like,
Yeah, you just.
all right, coach, I've enjoyed my time here, but time to go in the portal. All right, down the hall to the left. You know where it's at, and jump in the portal, and it sends you off.
Well,
to
you
wherever the
see
portal
all the
is.
graphics now have like the background. It's like
Yes.
a graphic portal, or it's the little things from the Avengers
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's what a portal would be. I think you just.
Are you a fan of the Twilight Zone?
I never really watched it.
Never really watched it. They show the marathons on like 4th of July and New Year's, and I always try and watch a couple episodes. Just a cool, weird show from back in the 50s or whatever. But it's kind of like that, where
They have
like
portals on there.
yeah, well, like at the start of the show, Rod Serling, introduces it, and they're going through space, and there's like
It's like a black hole.
doorways, black holes. There's an eyeball floating around, and you're entering a space where time and dimensions don't make sense. That's kind of what the portal is, and I like to envision that you just go into this weird realm, waiting for somebody to pick you out of it.
Well, time, dimensions, traditional college football values.
Yeah,
none of that
it.
exists
None of it
in the
matters.
portal. I did think it was a little bit telling, would probably be the word. So the Hold Your Lewis thing, I feel like in the past, because you know how people bag on the media these days. Like, you're looking
Sure.
for any reason to, like, complain. Why'd you do that? Well, you're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't see a single response of, oh, y'all got that wrong. Say, like, nobody even blinked about he's going to go in the portal, and then a couple hours later, he's not. Like, nobody even was fazed
Right.
by this. Just like, Sam Levitt was going to LSU, and then there's reports. I did see some people push back on this, like, is this serious? I don't know if you even caught this, but he committed to LSU this a couple of days ago. And then a little bit later on, the reports trickle out. Well, he is committed to LSU, but Tennessee is not giving up. They're making another offer.
Right.
And then it comes out later on, despite the offers from Tennessee, he is signed with LSU now. So it's just insanity
Yeah.
with the transfer. I mean, even Ty Simpson at Alabama.
Yes.
I'm going to the draft. Everybody thought he might be pulling a Carson Beck. Right down to the fact that Miami was one of the schools allegedly trying to get him to join their program via the portal. I believe Tennessee allegedly involved in trying to do that as well. And I got to respect what Ty Simpson has come out and said. And essentially, it is that, hey, I could have transferred out early in my career. I could have chased playing time. I could have chased money early on. It actually sounds like it truly matters to him that he wants to be an Alabama guy, that he wants to be known for, hey, I went to Alabama. I didn't transfer out when things were hard. I waited my turn. I developed. I became a starter, led them to a playoff, and then I got drafted. He's gonna go pretty high anyway, I think.
Oh,
But
yeah.
he's turning down some money for sure.
It is again. We could spend an entire week on how much our thought process and mindsets have changed on the way we view things in college sports across the board over the past 7 to 8 years with the portal and NIL and all that kind of stuff. Because it used to not be an uncommon thing. Like, hey, this kid grew up a fan of Alabama, or this kid grew up wanting to be an Alabama quarterback, and he stayed there, waited his turn, played, and then went off to the NFL or whatever it may be. But now it's such a foreign concept. Like, well, what do you mean you don't want to go to Miami and make $6.5 million reportedly to play another year of college football? Because I don't. I'd always dreamed of playing in the NFL. I played my year at Alabama, rose my draft stock. Again, we came into the year not knowing anything about this guy because he hadn't played any significant snaps. And halfway through the year, we were talking about him as one of the best quarterbacks in college football. The end of the season didn't go the way they wanted it to in the last couple of games that they played, obviously, but his draft stock is still really, really high. But again, we've been kind of so warped by so many guys and this transactional nature of college football that most guys would say, you know what, yeah, I'm going to go to Miami and make almost $7 million. I'll go to Tennessee and make $5 million. Ty Simpson's not doing that. And again, respect to him because it's very much an old school way of looking at college football that we don't see as much anymore.
If football does not work out, which I think it will for Ty Simpson, but, here's the thing, though. Quarterback, man, it is such a just crapshoot in terms of who's successful and who's not. So let's say it's not. For one, based on this decision, strikes me as somebody who's going to make long-term decisions as opposed to short-term. So probably going to save his money anyway.
Right.
But if my man wants to go back and open any business that he wants in the state of Alabama, then he's going to be set. You know what I'm saying? Like.
Yep.
There is still value to. So now, I think, Tyler, especially if you're not somebody that's going to go make a ton of money in the NFL, there's still great value that I think is lost in everything that's happened in being, hey, I'm Alabama all the way. I'm South Carolina all the way. I'm Clemson all the way. Whatever it may be, whatever school you went, okay, you're going to be supported by that alumni base. Maybe more than ever,
Right.
because now you're kind of rare.
Well, I mean, gosh, A.J. McCarron almost, ran for Senate in the state of Alabama, and I imagine he would have gotten some votes because he was and yes, that was a national championship quarterback, but beloved and, for his time there at Alabama and all that kind of stuff. Also, if Ty Simpson doesn't work out as an NFL quarterback, I imagine coaching might be in his future too, considering his dad being the coach at UT Martin and all that kind of stuff. He could get a job on his staff to start off with if he can't, find a way somewhere else. But yeah, and he mentioned in this article, and Chris Lowe's got a good write-up on On3 if you want to dive into all the details of it. He wasn't really making a whole lot this year because, again, he was unproven. He'd been at Alabama for 4 years and not played significant time. We didn't know if he was going to last the season as a starter. We were talking about Austin Mack and Keelan Russell, and, hey, maybe one of these guys, takes the reign, especially after that first game against Florida State. Like, this Ty Simpson guy, maybe he's not all that great. One of these younger guys may step in and take that job. But as the season went along, obviously came into his own and played really good football. But, yeah, he wasn't making $3 million as Alabama's quarterback because he was so unproven coming into the year.
Did they hint how much money in there?
He said less than $1 million. So we don't have a number figure, but he said he never made $1 million in NIL money in a season at Alabama. That's according to him.
Yeah.
Could he made $995,000? Sure, but not more than $1 million.
Which, I mean, that sounds insane. Like, oh, wow, you didn't make $1 million. Boo-hoo. But compared to what...
Consider what the market is.
What the market is and what he proved he is as a quarterback this year. Like, I can see, you can certainly see why he didn't make a ton of money going into this year. But with the year he had, I mean, he obviously could have cashed out. I mean, a lot of people thought maybe this time last year that Quinn Ewers was going to do the same thing. Yep. And he decided not to. So, yeah, it's you got to respect it, man, in this wild transfer portal world that we're in right now. Somebody that wanted to just be the guy at Alabama.
And now we get to answer the question in the offseason of who Alabama's starting quarterback this upcoming season is going to be, which I'm sure we'll talk about plenty as the months go by. We'll discuss some of the visitors coming to campus starting tomorrow. Try and get Chris on the line as well coming up next as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along here on the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes here in studio on your Wednesday. Chris Clark now joining us on the AAA heating and air phone lines from an undisclosed vehicle repair shop as he's getting his car worked on. Cars never act right when you need them to, especially during the winter months. So hopefully it doesn't cost Chris too much to get back in here tomorrow.
Chris, tell him that for a free repair, you'll mention them in this segment right now.
Yeah, and I think, guys, based on what I'm about to pay to get this vehicle done, we might have to bring the show on the road and come do a live show for him, to be honest. Maybe a few of them.
I won't lie. When I do like anything with local businesses now, I'm like, hey, I'm on the radio. If y'all are interested in doing some local advertising, let me know. Like, you never know. So, yeah, if I don't know, give them Dreamy Josh's email or something like that and see if they want to do some business before you leave.
Yeah, I'm gonna start taking Josh's business card around.
There you go.
Yep.
We'll get into some of these visitors in a moment. Wes and I talked about it at the beginning of the show, though. But, Chris, your reaction to the news in the morning of Josiah Thompson withdrawing his name from the transfer portal and returning to South Carolina.
Yeah, I think, given the circumstances, this is a positive thing for South Carolina and a positive thing for Josiah. It's safe to say, certainly based on his billing coming out of high school, guys, has the career gone like you would have hoped so far? No. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that, kind of like there's a lot of reasons for, say just the offensive struggles in general last year. It's multiple factors, but somebody that I still think has upside in his career, somebody that really, and it sounds funny to say this for a guy who actually ended up going through with entering the friendship portal, but I think Josiah was a guy that didn't really truly want to leave. I mean, you have situations where guys just want to leave or the staff wants them to move on. We've seen all those, but with Josiah, I think both sides kind of always had this thing should just work out, right? And so a lot of things happened during the process that led to him entering the portal. A lot of things happened since then. And now you're getting a guy back that, has plenty of experience for you. He's a homegrown kid. He wants to play for the Gamecocks. And I think that's evident by him, deciding to come back. And Shane Beamer is not a guy, and I'm sure y'all discussed this, he's not a guy that, is going to just let kids enter the portal kind of willy-nilly and then just take them back as some type of leverage play. Like any guys that have entered the portal and ultimately come back, whether it's after, a year layoff like Kilbur Edmond or a situation like Josiah Thompson, yeah, generally if a guy enters the portal from South Carolina under Beamer, he's going to end up somewhere else. But there have been a couple situations where, depending on the circumstances and all those conversations that go on behind the scenes, they'll be allowed back with the program. And that's what worked out here. I think positive for South Carolina because you kind of have, yes, a guy that certainly I think they hope you can get him healthy and have him take the next step in his development, but also, more of a known commodity, and that there's a lot of familiarity there with him and multiple staffers on this team.
So now that brings the offensive line numbers back up to 15 total bodies in that room. Again, still an opportunity to add a few more. I think Beamer, talked about having maybe 16, 17 guys as an ideal number. And as we end this short little dead period when it comes to on-campus visits, we'll get some guys coming back on campus starting tomorrow, and a 2-day visit scheduled for this weekend with Tylek Lockett, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that first name right, from Texas State, one of the better G5 offensive linemen is going to be coming on campus this weekend to see if he can maybe be another commitment for the offensive line for next year.
Yeah, I mean, Lockett's a guy that, again, standard disclaimer, take PFF for what it's worth, but put together a really strong resume if you look at his numbers there. Has a lot of experience, has been drawing some high-level interest. Looks like a guy that could really factor in on the interior. And even though the numbers are back up to 15, Tyler, you got to keep in mind a few of those guys, 3 of them, in fact, will be true freshmen for South Carolina. You want to increase your competition, your depth. You probably have a couple guys, at least out of this portal class, if not more than a couple, that you kind of pencil in and say, okay, this guy has a really good chance to be a starter. If he can land Lockett, he might fall into that category. He's going to be maybe a little bit more under the radar for some fans because he's not coming from a P4 school. He's not, a Jacarius Peak, who is one of the most highly sought left tackles in the portal that South Carolina landed, but I think nonetheless would be a really good get. And I think aside from him, I think South Carolina may still go for some more offensive linemen in this class. I've gotten that question several times actually already since Josiah Thompson news dropped. But they may go out and try to get some additional depth here in the portal too at tackle.
Tyler, that number is scholarship offensive lineman?
Yeah, scholarship offensive lineman.
I mean, guys, another factor in this too is you look at that room, and we often do just focus on scholarship guys. And, what's a scholarship guy was before might be different now because the rules are changing a little bit. But we'll put it like this: guys that were recruited to be scholarship guys initially, like recruited athletes. South Carolina also did lose some like walk-ons or former walk-ons, walk-on types to the portal as well, guys that are wanting to go play too. And so I think your overall numbers a lot of times, especially if you have a spring game or you have a scrimmage or you're doing a scout team, those walk-on guys end up being a key part of you just being able to practice as well. So I think another reason there that you're going to need to see the numbers change as well. And maybe there are some guys that come in, some guys that transfer in, or even that get added. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you add some additional guys from the high school ranks, maybe even as walk-ons that, just kind of fill out the rest of this depth. I think that's probably going to be a necessity. Chris, another position, that we've kind of been focused on throughout, and certainly you look at the idea of they wanted to add Coleman to the mix at edge, but did not work out. He's going to Tennessee. And then now you have South Carolina linked up with somebody who was just at Tennessee and is transferring out, Caleb Herring. Our guy Wilt Fong reporting that he'll be on campus at the end of this week. And, a guy who has played quite a bit at Tennessee, hasn't really taken over a true, starting impact role, but is looking for a fresh start and would be obviously under the tutelage of Deion Barnes if he were to pick South Carolina coming out of this weekend. And Chris, Herring actually has gotten a ton of interest out of the portal.
Yeah, Texas involved there. As of right now, looks like they may get a visit after South Carolina, kind of on the tail end of the portal window. So, you never know. We'll see how that happens. If things work out, maybe South Carolina during that visit says, hey, let's try to get this thing locked up, kind of like they did with Jacarius Peak, right, before he can get to Alabama. Maybe he goes through with the visit Texas, even if he takes it. Who knows? It's kind of hard to predict. Sometimes you hear guys come on campus and you're like, this is probably happening. I don't think we have quite as good of a feel on Herring. It's kind of more of a wait and see. But I think a legit possibility at a minimum for South Carolina. And, it's interesting because this is a kid who was formerly, I think, the number one recruit in the state of Tennessee coming out of high school. So clearly was somebody with size and physical ability. And, yeah, it's easy to point to it and say, yeah, he's played a good bit at Tennessee, hasn't made the impact maybe that he was projected to. But I think nowadays, guys, you have to look especially at transfer portal acquisitions, and you can't just say a guy is what he is, right? I mean, Kyle Kennard, yeah, there were some suspicions that he could be a really good player. He had 4 sacks in a game at one point at Georgia Tech. But did anybody look at Kyle Kennard and say, that's probably a Nagurski winner in his last year? I don't think anybody said that. You can even look at, Monkel Goodwine and Gabe Brownlow-Dendy, both former highly regarded, top 100, top 50 type guys coming out of high school who went to brand name programs. And through their first few years, did not have the impact that you would think. They get to South Carolina. They did some really good things last year. And Brownlow-Dendy, I think, is going to probably be a candidate to take another step this season. So maybe Herring, if you can land him, ends up being a guy similar to that, where you can bring him into a new situation and kind of unlock the remaining potential. But you're right, edge is definitely, I think, going to be a priority spot for them to try to close out this portal cycle.
Again, those visits start up once again tomorrow, and we'll be following those, see if South Carolina is able to get any more commitments as this week goes along. Chris, best of luck in getting your car repaired, and hopefully we see you back in here tomorrow.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Chris Clark there on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. Big game for men's basketball tonight, going on the road, taking on Arkansas. We'll talk about that a little bit to wrap up the show. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on your Wednesday here on the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes wrapping up the hour here on your Wednesday on the game. Wes, is the newborn keeping you up later than usual, waking you up earlier than usual? What's the sleep schedule like right now?
It's kind of funny, man. I don't really go to bed or wake up that differently.
Okay.
It's all the hours in between. It's like you're just not gonna sit there and just sleep.
Okay.
Like something's gonna happen.
Sure.
And you're gonna be woken up. Now, luckily, I have an amazing wife. She is the one like getting up to feed the baby in the middle of the night most nights. But we also have a puppy, so
Ooh, okay.
I most of the
Lot of
time
things happening.
have puppy duty. And if everybody else gets up, he wants to get up. Or the worst is actually when everybody is calm and sleeping except him. Then I'm just like, dude, I'm going to put you outside in the backyard. I don't, but I want to sometimes.
So are you game for a late tip tonight for men's basketball, 9 o'clock?
I'll probably make it, honestly.
Okay.
I probably will.
9 o'clock tip at Arkansas. Pregame coverage starting at 8:30 here on 107.5 The Game and 100.3 The Game out in Myrtle Beach. And we throw around the term must win a lot. I wouldn't necessarily put that moniker on this, but it's vitally important to get yourself back in the win column and get to even in conference play before you continue the onslaught of what the conference has to offer. And look, Carolina in the games they've lost has been in pretty much all of them, with the exception of maybe the Vanderbilt game that got away from you late there, but we didn't really get a chance to talk about it on this show. You had your opportunities against Georgia, played well defensively, 5-point game there at the very end. You just couldn't make a shot to save your life in those last 5 minutes. If you make a couple of those, that goes differently. You're going on the road to a very talented Arkansas team. For whatever reason, Lamont Paris has had John Calipari's numbers 3-1 against him and very nearly beat him in the SEC tournament the last time these two teams faced off against each other. So, from a talent standpoint, Arkansas is a better team. But, again, Coach Paris has shown the ability to beat Calipari more than once, and you're going to need that tonight.
Well, and Tyler, that LSU game for South Carolina, we got our first glimpse, I think, of, when this team was built, there was kind of like hey, here's the best case of what this team could look like. Here's the worst case of what it could look like. And, I'll be honest, man, the number of shooters that they added to this roster, I just really thought that we were going to see higher percentages both from behind the arc and just overall. And we have not seen it. And, I think we see that these guys have shooting touch and have a, ability to shoot the basketball. Their free throw numbers have been good most of the year, which, I think typically is just a sign of your shooting form and ability. And it just has not happened overall. And so we see that sort of, not that you're going to hit however many straight shots they hit to start that game by any means, but we saw the capability is there. So I think we saw them play well for large spurts of this Georgia game as well. You would have loved to have won that one and gotten the SEC record flipped, but didn't happen, which is what put some pressure on this game. But I don't know, man, just based on the muscle memory of going to LSU and just having to take a long road trip and going out there and doing it not that long ago, I wouldn't be surprised if they went out there and played pretty well again, honestly, frankly.
Yeah, and look, this is an Arkansas team. They don't play phenomenal defense. So Auburn put up, I think, 93 points on them the other day, or 95 points on them, I think, the other day in that loss. Again, very talented. You got Darius Acuff, one of the best freshmen in all the country. That's going to be a lottery pick coming up here. So you're going to have your issues to deal with. Nick Pringle, our old friend, is on this Arkansas team, so you're going to have to deal with him down near the basket, which is an area that South Carolina's had its struggles with when it comes to scoring points. But, again, you got a road trip to Auburn coming up this weekend, so vitally important to get yourself back in the win column. And I said this earlier, big difference between being 1-3 and 2-2 in conference play. I know it's only a one-game difference, but in terms of the outlook for the rest of the season, getting back to 500 would make you feel a whole lot better about where you stand compared to being 1-3.
Yeah, that's always kind of just numerically been a swing game. And just mentally, I think to be sitting there at 500, especially after, the non-con didn't go the way any of them, I believe, wanted it to or thought it was going to. And so, yeah, man, that would be massive. We'll see if they can do it. But you're going to need your guys. You're going to need Michi. You're going to need your bigger name guys, Mongolian Mike, to play well if you're going to win on the road.
Yeah, and again, we didn't get a chance to dive into it too much. Elijah Strong, obviously, phenomenal game against LSU, scoring 30 points, career high the other week, which is a big reason why they won that game, and didn't quite have the same impact in that game the other day against Georgia. Again, you're going to be dealing with a lot of size with this Arkansas team, so what kind of role can he play down there in the post? I think it's going to go a long way if Carolina can win this game tonight.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was, I'll speak for myself, maybe others too. I didn't know that Elijah Strong had that in him, like that he could go to that place. And we've seen him play with confidence. We've seen him, be willing to shoot the basketball, possess the basketball, and, has kind of been a volume guy. But that was impressive, man. And again, you don't have to get that out of him to win, but certainly when you start looking at who is going to control the basketball, who is going to stuff the stat sheet, he's now added to that list of guys that has showed he's capable of doing it.
Again, tip-off tonight at 9 o'clock. We'll talk about it tomorrow morning, as well as get you set for South Carolina women's basketball taking on Texas tomorrow night as well. That's coming up tomorrow. Halftime show with myself and Bill Gunner, though, coming up next as your Wednesday rolls along here on the game.
All right, guys, before I get out of here, let me tell you about our friends at Integrated Media. Like I said earlier, they've been to my home. They've been to Chris's home. Let them come to your home as well and upgrade all your tech. For me, it was pretty simple. It was about going out and making sure that I had, that great internet connection, whether we're streaming with a live show or whether you have to do video calls for work, whether you're a gamer, whatever that may be. You can take a step above Wi-Fi and actually run Ethernet throughout your home. That's what they did for us, running it into multiple offices. If that sounds like something you need done, 803-948-8327 is the number. If you go to integratedmediainc.com, though, you can get a better idea of all their great services they have, a gallery of some things they've done throughout the Midlands. Upgrading the smart home, home theater system, TV installs, security cameras, and more. Basically anything involving the audio and video at your home, they can do it for you. IntegratedMediaInc.com.